It's very exciting what I get to do, Dave. I've been fortunate to kind of go on into my little endeavor here to meet people who really know what they're talking about.
Really?
And so I'm calling you out. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Smock, PK Plumbing. He's the manager. He runs the plumbing side of the house.
Correct.
And a master plumber.
Master plumber.
So when you get to a position in the world where you need plumbing, you guys are the guys to call.
I'd like to think so.
And I tell you, it was so neat. We've had a couple hours of discussion. You came over initially. We talked about what kind of a plan we could put together to help make this something fun for you and for us, because we liked what you guys do as we did a little research about you and then reached out to you. And it literally became like, you're a wise man. And now I know why you're the master plumber.
Well, thanks. Yeah, so it was supposed to be what, 15 to 30 minute
right, just
interview,
a sit down discussion and talk about it.
I think we ended up at about 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours. Well, I told you the last meeting I had, so whatever you want to talk, we could talk. But ladies and gentlemen, as the Cardinal Cowboy, that's what I get to do a little bit of in St. Louis, because we do talk to the leaders in our community. That's just something I enjoy doing, and I've been working hard to get to meet these people, and so some of them will actually come in and talk to us. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Well, I really appreciate you reaching out, and when I was called and asked to, you wanted to interview not a professional plumber, but what's the word she used? A expert plumber.
Expert, yeah.
I thought, boy, they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. They couldn't find one, so they called me. No, I'm kidding. It's been 41 years. It's been a pretty wild ride being a plumber.
Well, and it's another one of those essential trades. I mean, something literally.
It is, absolutely, absolutely.
Since about 1850, I'm guessing, indoor plumbing.
Indoor plumbing, right.
It's only been close to 200 years.
My mom told me all about the times that she had to go out to the outhouse. I don't think I could have lived in that time. I have to have my porcelain, right?
I have a cabin that my parents have had since we were kids, and it literally they had an outhouse still.
Really?
An outhouse.
Really?
And so I never had to use it.
Sears and Roebuck magazine sitting next to it, our corn cob.
Right, and it literally was like, this is where we used to have to go and put on your coat and go outside. And,
that's right.
And use that. But now we've got some advanced stuff. So I guess my first question I always ask is, why did you decide to become a plumber?
It just seemed like the thing to do. So when I was in high school, so there's six of us kids. I'm the middle of six, and my dad was a lathe operator, worked the car carburetor, and my senior year in high school, I got the opportunity to take college classes, and so machinist was the area that I was thinking about going. I had started working, actually my first plumbing job was working for RainSoft, installing water softeners. And I really enjoyed it. And then when I had the opportunity to do the machinist, or to go to Jefferson College and to learn how to start as a machinist, I went to my dad and he says, no, you don't want to do that. Become a plumber. We're always going to need plumbers. And so from his advice, I got the opportunity to go to work for a plumbing company, and that's where it all began. And that was back in 1979.
Okay, yeah, I was a youngster at that point, but it's a good career to get into, like you said, because you do end up with something that's always in need. I mean, a lot of people talk about, I want to go to college and get something people definitely have to have. And so many of my buddies, I went away to college. I went to St. Louis University, right?
Right.
It was a 20-minute drive, but I did live on campus. But yeah, I got my degree in undergrad in communications. So I'm like, you always have to have communications. Some of these other jobs and careers, they're going away. Computers are taking that away.
Right.
But plumbing's not one of those. You're not going to be able to get a robot in a plumbing system. I don't think that's going to be a long time before they can automate all of that, because it's all custom, right, for every situation.
Yeah. I don't see that ever becoming, and I can't say ever, because, to tell you the truth, there are things that are happening today that if you'd have told me when I was in grade school or high school that these things would be happening, I'd say you're nuts. And there are things that are happening today. So, I mean, human beings are very resourceful, right? And we come up with new stuff all the time. So I'm sure that there's ways to automate things. I don't see that on the near horizon. So, yeah, I think you're always going to need plumbers, at least in the near future.
In at least century or so.
I would say probably, yeah.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit about the path that led to your success and PK Plumbing's success, if you would, that helped you guys get to where you are. Really a well-known, established company, 45 years experience. I think I see on your website.
Yeah, that's so. My path was kind of a tough one, and I worked for a small town plumbing company in Festus. Most of the time when people in St. Louis say, tell me a little bit about you, that's code for where did you go to high school, right? So.
Right. A little bit of Festus, is that
St. Pius X High School?
We played them in high school too. At Lutheran South. We went to shootouts, and we beat them in shootouts in soccer. So that was crazy. Well, sorry about that.
No, you're good. That's all right. I was after my time. If I would have been there, that wouldn't.
We would have beat us.
Yeah, I was the star athlete.
Did you play soccer too?
I played in grade school.
Okay.
And I went to Sacred Heart in Festus.
Okay.
And at the time, Sacred Heart and Our Ladies were the two big soccer names. My coach played for the St. Louis Stars. It was Tony Kuster.
Wow.
And then he went to DeSoto and was the coach there. And then Our Ladies Catholic school coach was Dan Bokern, who played for the St. Louis Stars. And so when Sacred Heart and Our Ladies met, we duked it out. It was some really good matches. In fact, my 8th grade year, we went to state, and we ended up losing. But when I got to high school back then in the 70s, even the Catholic schools did not have soccer programs.
Really?
Yeah. So we had kids that went to Our Lady Queen of Peace and all these different Catholic schools around the area. And they had huge soccer programs, and there were some good soccer players. We would have had a really heck of a team, but they didn't have that program back then. So I didn't play soccer in high school. Played football in high school.
Okay.
And track.
Okay.
So I was not the star athlete. I was just pulling your leg.
Oh, no, I understand that. Well, and we talk always about, give us something about your background so people can understand why it is and would you agree that sports probably helped you to develop competitiveness and drive and learning to be on a team and win and lose and all those things that you learned by playing sports?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. What taught me how to grab hold of tenacity and to make it was, I had a big fall in my life, and I came out of I started actually in grade school. I started with alcohol, and I told myself I'd never get into drugs. I started drinking at an early age, and then high school it progressed. Came out of high school, went into the service, and it really progressed. And so my senior year in high school was with a group of guys, and we were pretty intoxicated.
Okay.
And somebody handed me, a joint. And what I heard when they handed me that was not, do you want this? What I heard was, do you want to be a part of who we are? Do you want to be a part of? And that's what I was seeking at the time.
Right.
And so I took that drug, and my drug use just shot sky high.
Wow.
I do not buy into smoking weed doesn't lead to bigger things, because in my case it did.
Yeah.
And then coming out of the service, I continued that abuse, and it ended up to a fall. I was married, had 2 kids, and wasn't working, couldn't find work. In the 80s, mid to late 80s and early 90s, it was really bad to be in the trades, and and because of the wreckage of my past and because of my disease, we pretty much lost everything. We were homeless, And that fall taught me, that what it means to take responsibility for myself. I could blame it on a lot of people,
Right.
and but recovery would have eluded me until I took responsibility for my actions, and I had to do that. I was faced with it, and my wife never left me, my kids never left me, and we came out of it, and I came out of it a stronger person. My wife and I's relationship is probably the strongest it's ever been. But it was getting to the point where it knocked me to my knees, and I had to turn my will and my life over to the care of a higher power, which I choose to call God, and learn that I'm not in charge and that I'm not in control.
Yeah.
And that's what taught me which path to take. And there's days, I have to tell you, there are days when I look to my God and I say, I don't want to do this anymore. It's become tougher with the internet. It's become tougher with immediate gratification. Dealing with some customers can be really, really difficult. And I think and today's day and age, it's hard to find help, and demand the jobs that are in front of me. And some days I look to God and I say, I don't want to do this anymore. And look what I'm still doing, right? I'm still a plumber because I still have, he still uses me in this role. And so even though I say it, I look to him and say, it's your will, not mine. So,
Well, and ladies and gentlemen, that's why we allow to have an open discussion here, because this isn't just about a specific expertise or a special niche. We'll allow for up to a half hour of discussion on this show if we feel the story is appropriate. We talked a little bit about that before, but it always ties into the real world and the business side of it. So that helped develop you, and that's where you came out and said, got to get it together. And I'm going to become a plumber. And it's a trade that you enjoyed and mastered. And now you're a master plumber and you run a company.
Well, I got to a point where, and I did a lot of new work. I did a lot of new houses. And in a new house, you got to dig a ditch, right?
Right.
To put the pipes in the ground. And, before they pour the floor. And I always enjoyed that aspect of the job. And I got to a point where I just felt like I was beating my head against the wall, and I kept telling God, I don't want to do this anymore. Get me out of here and find me something else. And when we got to a point where we were losing the house, I'll never forget this. It was my metanoia. It was my conversion, right? I was new in recovery, just had found recovery, and my sponsor always told me, you get to a point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you tell God you're willing to do something. And if he holds it up to you, it's put up or shut up time. And I remember this, I'll never forget it. I was standing in my kitchen, and I was sick and tired of being a plumber. I was sick and tired of digging ditches, but I was more in the pain of knowing that they were coming to get my house and that I couldn't put food on the table for my family became greater. It was greater than the things that I was sick and tired of.
Right.
And I told God, I said, I don't care. I can't live like this anymore. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't care if it's digging a ditch. I'll do it. And I no sooner said it, my dad, and the phone rang, and I answered the phone. It was my dad. And he said, I found a job for you. I said, what is it? He said, well, it's digging a ditch. And I just stood there. I couldn't believe it. I took the phone away from my ear, and I just looked up, and I my ego, I said, you're laughing at me. Look, and I wanted to say no. And those words that my sponsor said came back to me. And so I said, I do it. And it ended up being something that was going to help out another person. What I had to do was to dig and form up a sidewalk so this man that my dad was working for could make it from his house to his workshop, because he had gotten to the point where he couldn't walk without a wheelchair. And his son needed somebody digging for him the sidewalk up so he could pour it. They put $200 cash in my pocket, put food on my table. And what I realized with that was that, as I unpacked it over the years, was that God was just waiting for that crack in my armor, to where I got to a point where I had set my ego aside. And I said, whatever your will is, I'll do it. And that was him reaching in and grabbing me by the hand and say, now let me show you how to do this. And at that point is when I realized I'm not in charge. I'm not in control. It's not about what I want. It's about what does God want me to do. And that was the beginning of a path that led to where I'm at today. You know, where I look at what I do, not so much as a job, but as a calling. You know, I learned this skill to help people. It's not always about the money. Right. It's about who am I helping, right?
Well, great point there, because there's anything is open for discussion on this show, because we want to help people to understand and realize everything that's involved with becoming a professional at any number of professions that are out there. And very often people do share personal stories to help. And right. I think that's neat for other people to see, because they go, wow, I went through something like that too. And I thought my world was crashing down, and it only happened to me. And they say, wow, there's a professional who now is at the top of the game, running an organization as a master plumber, and he got there. Maybe I can do it too.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, everybody's got a story, right? Everybody's got a story. Everybody has. Sometimes they don't realize what my story is. My spiritual director always tells me, he says, the reason God created human beings is because he loves a good story.
I have a similar comedic side of that to say, God got bored with the dinosaurs and just had to create something a little bit along those lines, though, really.
Right.
And but he really, not to get too, what was that? Agnostic, and then there's atheist, which is a totally different perspective.
Right.
I think this doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you analyze it, but that's just my perspective.
Right.
And so,
well, I go to that story that I just told you, and it's a true story. It absolutely happened that way. Just think of what had to happen to get everything into place, that I would say I'm willing to do whatever it takes, even if it means digging a ditch, and then have my dad call me and say it's digging a ditch. It really wasn't digging a ditch. And to me, that's God saying, you know, he put that inspiration for my dad to say what he did, so that I knew where it came from. You know, to think of what all had to happen for that to transpire, to me, it can't be left to coincidence. I don't believe in that.
Yeah, well, and the reason I believe I survived a coma and everything I went through, I want other people to share their story. Hopefully we don't have everybody here that has to have gone through a coma. That's kind of a crazy thing to have happened. But like I said, almost everybody goes through some difficult situation, and they still end up, if they land on their feet and have the right support, doing something productive with their lives, no matter
Absolutely.
what that is. Absolutely. It sounds like you found that. What is it about your business that fuels your passion? I mean, obviously, going to the ranks of master plumber, running a company, there's a reason you enjoy doing this a lot. What would you say that is?
So I'm a puzzler, right?
Okay.
One of my favorite memories of my childhood was my dad coming home on a Friday evening, and we would all, you know, all six of us would be there. My dad would come home and he'd bring a jigsaw puzzle, usually 1,000 to 1,500 piece jigsaw puzzle, and he'd open it up right after dinner. Mom would clear the table and he'd open it up, and he'd dump it out, and he'd go through and get all the straight edge pieces. And then once the straight edge pieces were all out, he'd put the rest of the puzzles back in the box and set it to the side. And then we would all come together and we would work that frame of that puzzle. And then we'd take all the pieces and lay them out and turn them over. And then we'd start working that puzzle. And we'd work that puzzle till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then, you know, somebody would get tired and they'd go get in bed. But the minute you woke up in the morning and came out, somebody was sitting at that table working that puzzle. Right. It was one of my most favorite memories. I love a jigsaw puzzle. So I love a puzzle in life, right? I love to be challenged with something that somebody else can't figure out. You know, that fueled my passion for plumbing and art. I'm an artist. I've always been able to draw. Okay, when I would do a job, you know, a new house, remodel, whatever, I'd stand back and look at the stacks, or I'd look at the water lines, you know, and they were run 4-inch centers, and the stacks would be completely plumb, and the letters on the plumbing would line completely up. And I actually had contractors that I did work for that would go behind me and take pictures of some of the work that I did. You know.
You mentioned that in our discussion. It got to be where it was for you as a work of art. So that's the connection from the puzzle to the plumbing,
Right.
And it's essentially a puzzle for you. And people
Correct.
would see the work that you put together and go, "That's beautiful," like
Right.
like a finished puzzle,
Right.
And put together in pieces.
Yep.
So that makes sense. And
My wife walked onto the job one day. I was installing copper in a basement, you know, hooking all the drops up, hooking up the water heater. And I was in the middle of running plumbing, and she walked on the job, and she looked up and she goes, "Now I understand why you like this. It's putting together a jigsaw puzzle." And that's true.
And the cool thing about that particular puzzle, by the time you're done with it, you're also providing the most essential thing humans need for survival,
Right.
Water, right?
Water and drainage.
And drainage, yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to have the water, you got to.
You better have the drainage, too.
Yeah, you got to have the
Great
drainage.
point. But yeah,
That's right.
essentially, but yeah, we cannot survive with more than like 2 days without water.
Right,
You
yeah.
can go without food for a week, I think they say,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
very important stuff. Well, I mean, that's why we say these businesses that people run in our country and our wonderful community literally have huge impact because they are doing essential things that are required for our sustenance, for us to exist. And plumbing is one of those.
Well, and that's a big, that becomes a big issue because, and I'm not saying that people aren't handy, because they are, but, a lot of people don't understand the danger, not just to property, but to health, if the plumbing system isn't done correctly. You and I were talking before we did the program. I've run into people that, putting in a gas water heater, and people think, yeah, I can do that. It's not a problem. Until they have carbon monoxide because, the flue's not sized correctly anymore. And really what should have been done was that water heater either needed to become electric or become a power vented water heater, because the flue, if a flue's too big, somebody comes in and an HVAC guy comes in and replaces your furnace and takes it out of that masonry flue, and now it's a high efficiency, and it's a PVC flue vent, and then you still have a water heater dumping into that flue. If that flue's too big, that masonry, the clay doesn't heat up enough to draw the gases, and you start getting spillover. Now you got carbon monoxide, or an expansion tank's not put in. And with the systems that we have today, expansion tanks are really, really important. You can cause a lot of damage. You can cause a lot of physical damage. If you got a water heater that's 210 degrees, 120 degrees, but it's not heat, the thermostat's not working properly, and you've got too hot of a water heater, and it doesn't have a place to expand to, and it's blowing off, it can cause physical damage. I've been on jobs where people, and it could be damage to your pocketbook.
Right. I was going to say, we talked a little bit about that when people try to cut corners.
Right.
Shortcuts or being cheap can be very expensive. We've used that quote a number of times on our show for other guests, because and you really help me to understand, because I'm one of the guys. I'm like, it's plumbing. It's these tubes. You fit them together. They've got it all made for you. You used to have to. We had one of those little cutter things that my dad had, and spin it around and cut the copper pipes. Well, now they're all PVC, and you just fit them together and get them wherever you want to go.
PVC, PEX. I think PEX is the big thing that's coming out now, and we do PEX. It's not one of my favorites because, again, plumbing for me was an art.
Yeah.
And when I ran that copper, it was beautiful. PEX is hard to make pretty, and I drug my feet a long time. I didn't want to get to PEX, but it's also, if you don't change with the times, it can really hurt you.
Sure.
And PEX has become something really big. We've gotten into it. We put in PEX. We have people that ask for it, and we will install it. So.
Okay, well, and that's part of the emphasis there. I wanted to make sure we talked about, ladies and gentlemen, was that you need to have somebody who knows what they're talking about, because it does seem like something that may not be too difficult. And the faucet is already set up, so you just got to unscrew a couple little things. But there's always something you don't understand that could be causing a bigger problem, and could be fatal in the case of carbon monoxide or some other things it causes, because the ventilation's not coming. And who knew that the heating? I didn't know that the heater the water heater use the same ventilation as the furnace? And I mean, geez, so these things, and somebody, they just hear on the news they died of carbon monoxide. They didn't explain all of that was the cause of it. You'd think that might have been they were in their garage, and that wasn't what happened. They were in the house.
Right.
So crazy to imagine that stuff. And again, back to get it done right the first time. What do we say is the one thing that sets your business apart? PK Plumbing, obviously, been around for so long. We even looked up, you've got a number of reviews going, but we talked about it. You don't count on reviews. You don't need reviews. You've been around so long.
We don't. I mean, we're starting to, because I know that the internet is someplace that people really find, try to find what they're looking for. And so, as I said before, if you don't change with the times, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that we've actually started focusing more on. So PK Plumbing is owned by PK Construction. We have a young lady that we just hired to come in and set us up with a website. We never really had a website. Set us up with a website. So we're starting to focus more on the reviews and what's coming in. What sets us apart? I think it's the well-rounded plumbers that we have. My guys, you know, they've been through the training. What a lot of people don't understand too with a plumber, and I get people that call and say, hey, you know, that seems a little expensive. Well, what they don't really understand is that these guys go through a lot to get trained and get to a point where they know when they walk on the job that they're going to be able to help you out and give you the service that you need. You know, it's a 5-year formal apprenticeship through the city and through the county. And with that 5 years, there's also 500 hours of classwork time that they have to put in. Now, we belong to the Missouri Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Council, and with that, we have access to an e-learning program that's done online. But that's still time that they have to put in. And then after they take their test, and it's a 6-hour test. It's not an easy test. And then after that test, they have to maintain that license. Wow. So they have to do continuing education. Yeah.
All right, everybody, stay tuned. This is the Your Little Castle Show. Dave and I are going to continue with this discussion. But for those of you that saw the show and ended at this point, because we're up to our time limit, we continued the whole show, and you can see it on Your Little Castle Show on YouTube. So check that out. All right, everybody, you're enjoying the Your Little Castle Show. Stay tuned for more excitement. Tune in, go to the yourlittlecastle.com or our Your Little Castle YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We got it all out there, everybody. Thanks. Stay tuned for more. Giddy up.